This is Live Booleans.
Actually, I want to ask you, what sort of tools did you use when you actually composed Goldeneye? Because I know there's an uncompressed version of Goldeneye on YouTube that I always listen to. Was it, what was the process of going from making it and then putting it into this small cartridge with such limited memory?
Yeah, so I think sometimes people get confused about compression on video games. I don't think they quite understand it. Like some people think you write the track, then you compress it like an MP3 and put it in the game. Like you got it. That's not how it works. You got game guys, you know how it works. So I wrote like those 6 tracks. It's like 6 tracks that are all full quality. I was waiting for a dev kit to turn up. I didn't have a dev kit at the time because the N64 circuit board sat inside the Silicon Graphics Indie dev machine. They were the computer of the day. They were super pricey. Like all the special effects in Hollywood were on SGI machines, So it was super expensive. Like it was kind of quite prohibitive for companies to work on the N64 because you had to get a dev kit. It was a lot, like 20 grand a good. So I wrote 6 tracks while I was waiting for that to turn up, and then I was like, oh right, now I'll put in the machine, and Graham Norgate would be in there, well I said, now it doesn't work like that. You've got to take it to bits and get every instrument, crunch it down, resample it. I was like, I'll see it.
Because each sound is triggered from the game live, isn't it?
Right. So you make your little MIDI orchestra or MIDI sound set. Yeah. It sits on the cartridge, and then you put in a MIDI file, and the game plays the MIDI file. And the MIDI file on each track's got a program number, so it pulls the instrument that you're going to track. Program number 20 is a guitar or whatever it is. So that's all in real time. But because GoldenEye was the first one of the early games on the N64, it's always the same with Nintendo. The early games that get a much smaller memory space, like an 8 megabit, I think. And it got to be bigger as the games went on, but right at the start, so it was even worse. Like at that point, we're even compressing MIDI files. You know how small a MIDI file is, right? It's like it's tiny. So even to the point of where, if you'd got a drum pattern that was going do 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 through the entire track, you'd write one bar of it, you'd put loop points at the end of the bar, and you'd give it a nut and say repeat 5 times, just to save those extra little bits of information. It was so tiny. Like, you wouldn't care. That's so small. So, like, a lot of the instruments were like, there was 16 kilohertz or less. Nothing was above that. So, like, you think 44.1 CD quality, right? Like, it was at least 16, and bass. Anything that was bassy was like 8 kilohertz, so you could get it in there. They're all 16-bit, but they're all low down sample quality. So we'd get the instrument, whatever it was, we'd resample it down, try and add back in some high-end EQ because it was just going, like that. So you lost all the high end because you lost all the sample rate, and then compress it and then stick it into the machine. So things were super super tiny, to the point where we had to loop cymbals because having a cymbal going with a long decay, it was just far too. So you had to kind of go. Get the attack, and loop it, and attack, which is awful. So it'd go, and then add an envelope to it. So you go,
just to get that whole feeling of it fading out, kind of thing.
That's why the cymbals sound bloody awful because that's all you could do with it. Yeah.
So you were quite involved in the actual implementation of the music then?
Yeah, we entered everything ourselves. So we'd enter all the sounds. You'd put them into this big long text files. There'd be a line of text that would give the key mapping and the pitch and all that stuff. You'd do that, and then you'd compile it and add it into the game. So you're pretty hands-on back then.
Is that stuff you had to learn on the job, or was it something that you knew before Rare?
No, it was definitely on the job because it wasn't. It was proprietary. There was no middleware. There was no like F mode or Ys. It was just proprietary.